It's taken me over 50 years to realize that the reason I've always felt different than others, the reason I have so many times faked it in a social setting, using sarcasm and humor as ways to fit in, the reason I am always so exhausted after socializing to the point where I have to stay home for a few days after any function just to recharge. I crave alone time and quiet time is because of unresolved childhood trauma that rolled right into a toxic marriage. Have you ever felt like you had to become another person just to hide who you truly were because you couldn't deal with the reality, or you didn't want people to know just how tormented you were really inside? Or maybe you just didn't understand that this wasn't normal. I mean, I feel like all of us Gen Xers have gone through some sort of childhood trauma. Am I right? Because we grew up in the 80s. That's self-explanatory. But I experienced childhood PTSD that followed me into adulthood and manifested itself into some really fun self-defeating behaviors. Things like obsessive exercising, self-blame, mental cluttering, bad relationship choices, because I didn't know how to regulate, how to heal my trauma. I lived most of my life thinking that it was all me, that it was all my fault, that I was just weird and distracted and highly sensitive. From my earliest memories of being about 3 or 4 years old and pulling out all of my doll's hair and gouging out its eyeballs, or shutting our cat in a drawer to hear it cry, I really feel like that wasn't normal. And for many years, I could never understand why I did those things because I had blocked out a lot. And I was probably releasing my frustration with things that I just couldn't control. It just wasn't a calm home life. My sister and I dealt with a controlling mom and a narcissistic dad and a lot of intense stress at a very young age. And then after my divorce, I made some more defeatist choices as a result of trauma I experienced during my toxic marriage. In all fairness and full disclosure, this wasn't who I was all of the time, because as a form of self-preservation, I developed this really cool way of blocking out a lot of childhood memories. So as long as I didn't experience any heavy triggers, for the most part, I was fine. I also figured out how to put on a mental shield when I needed to become more social and fun and fit in. And really, it was this tool I would just pull out whenever I needed it. But doing all of this, being this different person, it was really exhausting. It affected me the worst when I became a teenager. By that time, my parents divorced, and they both really just didn't want to deal with my sister and I. I remember feeling ignored a lot, like I was just a burden in their life. So to survive those years, I learned to be funny, to be sassy, sarcastic, witty. I had this way to make people laugh, but I was not really happy. I joined the school band, I did sports, I did lots of after-school activities, and I always seemed to have a boyfriend. But all of that was really just so I could have some positive attention, but for the most part, so I could stay away from home as much as possible. I remember winning some things. I won some blue ribbons and some gold medals for band and for sports, but I doubt if my parents really remembered. But that's okay because I did it for myself. I was confused about who I was because I wasn't nurtured or praised much, really. My parents just had other things on their mind. But you know what? I didn't expect it either. Because when all you know how to do is live in emotional trauma, that stays in your subconscious and you're drawn to that familiarity. And then you seek a partner who understands what you've been through so you can relate And so that perhaps it will all finally start to make some sense. But when both people still have that unresolved trauma, it can cause more problems and more triggers. My first husband went through his own share of childhood PTSD with a physically abusive dad. And over time, he revealed those effects of his own trauma. He would get stressed out and insecure about the smallest little things. And because he didn't know how to regulate his own emotions, he would become reactive with a lot of verbal abuse. And his actions would trigger my own trauma, which never ended well at all. We were both falling down this hole, and tragically, we didn't know how to stop. And then after a time, something really, really weird happened to me. I snapped. All of my emotions, any shred of feelings or love or hate I had for my husband was suddenly gone. And later on, I learned that I had experienced what was called emotional shutdown. It was surreal. It was nothingness. I remember quietly and calmly saying to him that I was done. And I was. I was done. But the effects of that reinforced trauma stuck with me and made me into this different person. I ended up making some reckless and skewed choices after that. I was really seeking love and security, but I was still very raw and unhealed. So what happened was I would latch on to people who weren't right for me. And it took many years and some really hard life lessons for me to finally start to heal, to understand that none of this was my fault and that I needed to spend time alone, understanding myself so I could reset my path. I set boundaries and I chose peace. And once I did that, I began emerging into who I was supposed to be. And then I was able to make positive, edifying choices in my life and in love. If you're a victim of childhood PTSD that has taken you into toxic relationships, you can break that pattern and learn to re-regulate. But first, you need to understand that what happened to you is not your fault. And once you have accepted that, then you can start the healing process just by being kind to yourself. And it really doesn't have to be complicated. I believe in therapy, but sadly, I was never able to find a therapist I could relate to. So I just learned to practice my own healing process, and that is perfectly fine. You have survived this life so far, so you need to go celebrate yourself by doing something fun with zero guilt. Just go do the thing and live in the moment. Get out into nature. Walking does wonders for your body and for your mindset. Trauma disconnects you from your body to survive. So exercising helps reconnect you so you can start feeling complete again. Don't overdo this at first. Learn to be gentle with yourself. Journal your feelings. And it doesn't have to be organized. Just scribble it all down. This really helps reset your mindset. Enjoy being alone. Create a quiet space where you can just be with your own thoughts. Allow yourself to have peace. Set boundaries with the toxic people in your life. Some of them you can't avoid, like family, but practice not being reactive. Put an emotional shield on if you have to. Protect your peace. Be who you need to be when you're around them. And then you can go back to your safe space. And when you're ready to socialize, be with someone who is a positive influence, someone who nourishes your soul, someone who makes you laugh, because laughter is truly the best medicine. Those are all the things I did that began my healing process. And as a result, I am stronger, I am more resilient, but I'm also still healing because I am a work in progress. But things are getting better. And it does get better. I promise you that. So take a moment to celebrate yourself each and every day. You have come a long, long way, and you are stronger than most people. There's an anonymous quote that says it all. The mirror shows your face, but not the nights you didn't break. It reflects your body, but not the battles you've survived just by waking up. It can't see the softness in your strength, the light in your cracks, the way you keep going when no one claps. You are beautiful, and not because you're flawless, but because you're still here. Be proud of who you are. Take care, and I will chat with you soon.